Alright, welcome back to PackagedSardines. I'm going back into the world of CreepyPastas with one that's more interesting than creepy, It's actually, I don't know quite yet. I haven't fully read it. I just kind of skimmed over it, but it seems interesting. Okay. I don't have much time. I'll make this quick. I don't have much time. None of us do. I'm going to be leaving out some details and changing others. I have no way of knowing which of what you're reading is already working for them. In fact, you don't know if you are either. Christ, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. I've known Brian since college, and we lived in the same floor freshman year, and we had some intense Call of Duty battles while everyone else was out improving their social skills. He was an asshole, but he was my kind of asshole, and I took a liking to him. He was a computer science major, and I was in the music school. To this day, I don't know a damn thing about computers, but I'd get a kick out listening to him talk about that stuff. He did a lot of black hat hacking and would constantly make vague references to bizarre documents and schematics he would pull off government computers. To me, they sounded ridiculous. Bioengineered doomsday viruses, underwater experimentation labs, laser cannons in space. I was convinced he was making it all up. After graduation, we both stayed in the city, but we weren't able to see each other much due to our respective work commitments. We'd get together every few months or so, and he'd always have some new piece of government conspiracy meat for me to chew on. We got drinks over the summer. He told me he was looking into something major, something called Operation Stingray. Serious security, even around the most innocuous references to it. A very, very big deal, he assured me. I nodded and challenged him to some drunken team fortress. Can't tonight, man, he said, but when I blow the lid off this thing, I'm going to pyro your ass like the old days. Sure thing, Brian, I said. Let me know how that works out for you. That was the last I heard from him for months. Then out of the blue, one night he texted me. Brian said, we need to talk. Meet me at the local restaurant tomorrow at noon. Don't mention this to anyone. Me, I say, sure, man. Is everything okay? Brian's like, I don't know. Just don't be late. I chuckled. Always so dramatic. Lindsay rolled over in bed. What's up, hon? She said. Nothing, babe. Just Brian being Brian again. Gotta sleep. Yeah, because he's Bob Dylan all of a sudden. Nothing, babe. Just being Brian. Go back to sleep. I can't take this seriously no more. Okay, God. I got to the restaurant a few minutes early to snag a table before the lunch rush. Across the street, there was a small protest going on outside one of the big downtown banks. Money for schools, not for bonuses, they chanted. Brian staggered in, weak old scruff, pale, puffy skin, bloodshot eyes, sweat. I'd seen him like this a few times in college, but Christ, we're supposed to be adults by now. He clutched and crumpled a manila envelope with both hands. Morning, beautiful, I said. Thanks for coming, man. I didn't know who else to call. I'm sorry. Dude, relax. Sit down. He glanced around the restaurant and took a seat. He wouldn't let go of the envelope. Were you followed? He said. Listen. Were you followed? Are you serious? Look, we can pretend to be spies only so long, as you don't creep me out. He reached out into the envelope and pulled out a small white pill. He held it out to me. What the hell is that? I said. Just take it. Dude, I'm not gonna get fucked up with you in a crowded restaurant in the middle of the day. No, it's just a vitamin. Take it. Since when did you become such a health nut? Just take it, man, please. His eyes wild and desperate as they evaporated any trace of a smile from my face. Okay, chill. I took the pill and swallowed it. Happy? He visibly relaxed and reached into the envelope again. He removed a stack of papers and placed them onto the table. I'll try to go over what I can, but I don't have much time. But everything you need to know is right here. Seriously, Brian, are you going to tell me what I just swallowed? It started about a year ago, he said. I was cracking some DOD contractors for shits and giggles, and I kept seeing the word Stingray being mentioned. Cryptic shit, but like the top secret memos that just said Stingray is a ghost, stuff like that. I was curious, so I poked around for leads. There wasn't a lot to go on, but there was a few breadcrumbs that led to a facility out in the desert in Bumblefuck, Utah. DRS 117, they called it. Tiny place, a staff of a couple dozen with bullshit names like James Smith, John White, etc. Everything about this place was classified, and I mean everything. The fucking cafeteria budget was redacted. Riveting. You've really outdone yourself this time, man. Shut up and listen, he said. The place was a black hole. No info came out of there at all, save for a few emails sent out to the DoD heads that said, the project is proceeding on schedule. I poked around for a while and eventually I pulled out the name of an applicant that they were interested in working with at DRS 117. Some big shot neuroscientist out at Stanford. A few days after I saw his name mentioned, there was a news report saying that he had died in a car accident in the Redwoods. A few days after that, a memo made the rounds saying that the new Project 117 member was proving to be a valuable resource to Stingray's development. A smiling waiter walked up to the table. Are you gentlemen ready to order? I think we need a few more minutes, I said. Not a problem. Take your time. The waitress lingered around for a second. His mouth was smiling. Well, no, that says waiter. It was a guy. All right. Where am I? His mouth smiling, but his eyes seemed to be studying us. He left, and Brian continued. The Stanford guy was a big name in his field. He specialized in developing systems that could link the human brain with computer interfaces. His early work eventually led to the development of some new next-gen prosthetics. He leaned in and his voice seemed to drop to a low whisper. Here's the kicker. At the time of his death, he was working on a method of wirelessly transmitting electrical signals into the brain to stimulate neural impulses. Massively complex stuff. But the gist of it, that his system could project images and sounds and sensations directly into the brain from a computer. Not just that, but depending on what part of the brain you targeted, it could create emotions, memories, and even the thoughts themselves out of thin air. His colleagues thought he'd lost his shit, but he maintained that the system would someday revolutionize mental health treatment. He thought he'd be able to diagnose the specific malfunctions in an individual's thinking to fix them with a laptop. Of course, after the accident, no one was able to locate his research. His hard drives had been erased and his notes were missing from the lab. I rubbed my eyes. I wasn't nearly drunk enough to be listening to this shit, and I was starting to get a headache. Not to sound uninterested, I said, but let's go ahead and order already. I'm not feeling so hot right now. Trying to focus, he said. I knew I needed to get more info, so I looked into the weak link in communication chains. I found the information in Choke Point, the one guy who was the direct liaison between 117 and the Defense Department. Everything went through him. Over a few months, I got into every piece of computerized electronics that this guy touched, and I waited. The guy was careful, very careful. It took a while, but eventually he slipped. He left an unencrypted video file on his laptop without password protection one night, and I snatched it up. When I watched it, well, here, see for yourself. He tapped his phone and then handed it to me. The screen showed a large white room with a chimpanzee sitting in the middle eating a bowl of fruit. Off to the side was a man, stood at the computer console. He was facing the camera. Stingray, experimental test subject 117011. Simple motor functions, he said. He tapped on the keyboard, and the chip stopped eating. Stopped moving at all, actually. It sat there, completely motionless like a doll. Right arm, the man said as he tapped the command on the keyboard. The chimp raised his right arm. Stand, the man said. The chimp stood up. Take 7 steps to your left. The chimp did so. The video cut out and started up again. Apparently at a later date, the same setup as before. Experimental test subject number 117011, the man said. Emotional regulation. He tapped on the keyboard and said, Anger! The chimp immediately flung fruit across the room as he launched into an awful screaming rage. It rushed at the man and raised its arms to strike him. Sadness, the man said. The chimp collapsed onto the floor and moaned. It curled into a ball and pressed its face into his knees. "Fear," the man said. The chimp screeched and scrambled into the corner of the room, eyes wide and shaking. Again, the video cut out and it was restarted. The man stared into the camera without speaking for a long silence. "Experimental test subject number 117-011, he said at last. Preservation override." The man tapped away on his keyboard and paused for a moment, looking at the chip. His fingers hovered over a key. He sighed and pressed it. The chimp went motionless for a second and then raised its hand to his face. The chimp stood there. It stood there. It sat there. It stood there. It sat there, quietly, as it tore its own eyes out. The man looked into the camera. "Based on these results, I recommend moving to phase 2 immediately." The video went black. "What the fuck did you just show me?" I said. "That's not even half of it," Brian said. Pretty soon after that video, I started talking with Lafarge, and that's when things got really weird. The waiter stepped up to the table again, and Brian waved him off. "We still need a few minutes," he said. "I'm sorry, sir. There's a phone call for you." Brian frowned. "It must be Lafarge. I told him I was meeting you. Wait here." Brian and the waiter stepped into the back of the restaurant, and I sat there rubbing my temples. I was in the mood to listen to conspiracy fantasies, and now it looked like I was getting into a migraine. I decided that I was going to execute myself when he got back. Conspiracy games aren't fun when you have a splitting headache. I looked out the window at the protest. A waifish girl with blonde dreadlocks and a knit sweater was reciting slam poetry about the evils of greed. The ineffectiveness of it all would be comical if it wasn't so sad. The waiter walked by again. I touched him on the arm. "Listen, I'm not afraid. I'm afraid I'm not feeling so well. I have to step out. Please tell my friend I'm sorry. I'll get in touch with him later this week." "Not a problem, sir. Will your friend be arriving soon?" "No, I mean the friend who was just here. The one you took back for a phone." The waiter looked puzzled. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't know what no, you've been seen by yourself since you just arrived." I looked at him. Was this kid messing with me? "That's not funny," I said. I stood up, walking to the back of the restaurant. "Brian? Hey, Brian, you there?" I turned into a small hallway and held the phone and the restrooms. It was empty. I checked the rooms. Nothing. I checked the men's room too, but there's still nothing in there. I walked back to the front of the restaurant. "Okay, cut it out, kid," I said to the waiter. "Where's my friend?" "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't know who you're referring to." I felt the eyes on me. As I looked around, the rest of the waitstaff were all perfectly standing still, staring at me with blank expressions. The waiter stepped toward me. "Well, there is a phone call for you," he said. "Follow me to the back." The waitstaff advanced on me. A thunderous crash sounded as a brick smashed through the plate glass window. The plate splashed through the plate glass window? At the front of the restaurant, I looked into the hole and saw that the peaceful little protest had turned savage. The protesters were smashing the window and cars and attacking passerbyers. The poetry girl was standing in the middle of the street, straying and staring into the restaurant with a crazed grin. We locked eyes for a moment before the police cruiser smashed into her, sending her flying into a cloud of red mist. The restaurant erupted in chaos. Diners attempted to flee. Knocking the waitstaff aside, I grabbed Ryan's manila envelope and then from the table jumped out the window. Police officers flooded the scene. They fired tear gas and beat the protesters bloody with batons. But it was all wrong. They came too quickly, almost immediately, as soon as the protest turned violent, as though they were waiting for it to happen. I sprinted home and bounded up the stairs to my apartment. I flung the door open. Lindsay was slicing tomatoes in the kitchen, and she grasped when I burst into the room. I slammed the door behind me and locked it. Jesus, honey, is everything okay?" she said. I don't know. We have to call the cops. Something happened to Brian. What? What happened? He just disappeared. He went to get a phone call, and then the waiters in my head is throbbing, and I collapsed on the couch. Lindsay ran to me. Honey, calm down. Just breathe. Everything's going to be fine. Just breathe. I sat up, and I stood behind the couch. Her hand on my back made me feel better, and I relaxed. Well, you're right. It's just I need to think. I don't even know where to begin, I said. I looked down at the manila envelope, and I opened it. And another smaller envelope was inside. I pulled it out and saw the words, "If anything happens to me," written on the front. Just calm down, Lindsay said, rubbing my shoulder gently. Whatever it is, we're going to figure it out. I touched her hand and looked to a reflection on the TV. Thank you, I said, smiling. I looked back down the envelope. I opened it and pulled out a stack of papers, where on top was one single word written in black marker. Run. I looked at Lindsay's reflection. She was raising a knife behind her head, ready to plunge it into my back.